Hello and welcome to the Statesman Talk. I'm Ananya Dasgupta. On this episode, we're joined by Jawed Ashraf, former India Ambassador to France and former High Commissioner to Singapore. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Ambassador Ashraf, a lot has happened since India launched Operation Sindoor on the 7th of May. Is it the first time that we've clearly defined a counter-terrorism strategy in line with the objective of zero tolerance towards terror?
Yes, I think both in the action that we took, as well as in the clear enunciation of a new doctrine by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, we have demonstrated an absolutely new approach towards realizing our policy of zero tolerance for terrorism. As you have noticed, as you've seen, and the world has seen, in response to this absolutely barbaric, horrific terror attack on April 22nd, we launched a series of high-precision strikes on 9 identified targets, which were terrorism hubs in both Pakistan-occupied Kashmir and on the territory of Pakistan. 2 important high-value sites were Muridke, the headquarters of LET, and Bahawalpur, the headquarters of Jaish-e-Mohammed. Now, both have been in our sites for at least 3-4 decades. And in fact, on a number of occasions, we've brought these 2 major nurseries of terrorism to the global attention. Pakistan, this is the pride of Pakistan's army. They also, I think, protect them and guard them very heavily. So it was a deep strike at the very core of terrorism ecosystem inside Pakistan, and it shook the Pakistan establishment, especially the military, which felt that these 2 and many other sites in Pakistan were absolutely secure. And the terrorists also felt that they had the shield of security from any punitive steps from India. In the past, there used to be actually a choreography in which we would mount some both military pressure and international pressure, but there was no concrete military action. And what would happen is that there would be some international pressure on Pakistan to take some cosmetic steps, not very substantive though, and that would give Pakistan in some sense a free pass, because that would lead to de-escalation. This time, I think we have conveyed to them our resolve, our will, and our capacity to them, to the international community, and to our neighborhood, that we are capable of looking after our security, and that we are prepared to take action on our own, that we are political leadership and the military leadership have the capacity to take acceptable political and military risks and costs in doing so, and that we are ready to actually take control of the levers of post-attack developments in a way that we actually control the evolution of the escalation. Now, this was one very strong message. We had also, of course, remember, in an act of great responsibility, conveyed this to Pakistan's DGMO, tried to reach out to them to convey this, that please stand aside. We're not targeting civilians. We are not targeting military installations or establishments. This is a pure response to an act of terror against internationally well-known terror hubs. But of course, they chose to respond militarily by targeting civilian and military targets in India. They had no other option, because we don't have terror hubs in India. And that actually constituted an act of war. That the initial, first you had 2-step escalation from them. First is a terror attack, and then we had a military response directed at our cities,
Right.
our civilians, as well as military installations. And so therefore our response was very strong. And as you've seen, swift, and we inflicted damage. They tried to raise it again the following evening, and we responded proportionately to maintain the escalation dominance in every domain. This was the important message. But then, remember, once, as a result of the request from Pakistan, we had a ceasefire or a pause, literally, I mean, specifically a pause in military action under Operation Sindoor. Prime Minister, after consulting his entire national security establishment, the defense establishment, the diplomatic his aides. He gave a statement on May 12th, didn't rush into it immediately after
Yes.
that, as Pakistan's prime minister did, with comprehensive evaluation, in my judgment, which is why he did that on May 12th. And there he enunciated a very clear strategy, a new doctrine. Number one, Operation Sindoor is what we have seen is a pause. It has not ended, and that we will judge it by the actions that Pakistan takes. So that means we also have in a state of force posture and mobilization and readiness, which new technology enables us to be, to respond swiftly to any act of terror. And we'll see what steps they take. The number two was a three-pronged strategy. And that is very important to recognize, that it raises a new level of threshold in our response. One is, of course, if you hit us, we'll hit you back, and we will maintain that dominance in that domain. Number two was that we will not fall for the nuclear blackmail. And this is a very important thing, because this has happened, and I've written about it since 1998, when both countries went nuclear, as declared themselves as nuclear weapons state. Pakistan has pursued a low-intensity conflict using a proxy war against India, in the belief that India will not pursue a conventional military retaliation against Pakistan because of the nuclear ambiguity and because of this nuclear threat or risk. Now, this may have entered our calculations at different points of time. Remember, and I've written about this, that you have to remember that these are not loose. This is a larger part of it is loose talk. We're also watching, following Pakistan's nuclear doctrine, nuclear strategy, nuclear capabilities, deployment very closely. They also know about our capabilities. Right. But throughout this, we acted, by the way, while we have called that nuclear bluster and that bluff, we've acted with restraint. You didn't hear one word from any Indian political leader or official or military leader speaking about nuclear issues in this. And this is an act of restraint. We were also careful in what we targeted when we launched our military campaign. A large space for what you can call for conventional domain in pursuing our strategy. We've also seen that in Ukraine, where Russia had a number of times expressed or conveyed nuclear signals if red lines were crossed, but they were not executed when those red lines were crossed, because at the end of the day, nuclear weapons are guarantees of state survival, not your usual war-fighting instruments. So that's the second part. The third part is, of course, that we will erase the distinction between military or state sponsors and terrorists. Yes. This is a new element which didn't get that headline. Why did we do that? Because we saw that there were people, I mean, all of India saw that senior military leaders of Pakistan Army, government officials, were attending the funeral of internationally recognized slain leaders or terrorists. Now, this is a clear evidence of the fact that terrorism in Pakistan is an instrument of state policy, of their military's political military strategy against India. And therefore, we don't make that distinction. And the final element of Prime Minister's important message was that, we are not going to talk about anything with Pakistan till terrorism stops. So there's no talks, there's no trade. And that the new element, all of this, commercial, diplomatic, people-to-people tie instruments have been used in the past. But this time it's the Indus Water Treaty. Indus Water Treaty, and we have, I think, very good national security, technical, and other reasons to put that in abeyance. And I think that will be maintained till we see some, the preamble of this Indus Waters Treaty and the genesis of Indus Waters Treaty is some sort of a good neighborly relation. But in the atmosphere of persistent cross-border terrorism and unremitting hostility, it is very difficult for us to justify the continuation of the Indus Waters Treaty. In any case, by the way, we had sought reviews earlier on 2 occasions because of a completely changed technical, geological, hydrological, demographic circumstances that we see. This is something that was signed in 1960. The world has changed. Technology has changed. glacial melt, climate change, all of that affects these things.
Right.
So I think this is, again, an important pressure point. So yes, to sum it all up, it is both what we did on the intervening night of 6th and 7th, and all the way in terms of our response, but also very clearly enunciated as a new doctrine for our policy of zero tolerance for terrorism by
Right.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
Yeah, as you mentioned, the Prime Minister has clearly said this operation is not over. It's only been paused. What does this new normal mean? And, how long will India remain on alert? Or what will be the threshold beyond which Operation Sindoor will be unpaused?
I think, we always remain in a state of pretty high alert. Now, in the sense that this is not a one-off problem of cross-border terrorism. We've been experiencing it for 4 decades. And from 89-90, we've seen that escalate dramatically in Jammu and Kashmir. We've also seen major attacks in other parts of India. And the Mumbai terror attack of 2008 is seared very deeply on the consciousness of this country. So I think we remain, in terms of our intelligence, in terms of our predictive ability, in terms of our efforts to prevent cross-border terrorism, remains always very alert. What we are now talking about is that what we have seen is a pause or a cessation of military action in response to a request from Pakistan. So in that sense, we are ready, or in a state of readiness. Now, what does that mean? You see, no longer with modern technology, you need to deploy hundreds and thousands of lakhs of troops along the border. We have a forward posture on a regular basis. Okay. But today's technology, today's precision weapons, today's drones, satellite intelligence, signal intelligence, all of that helps to ensure that the burden of deployment and readiness is much less in terms of cost as well as men and material. So this is a posture, and this is a state of readiness that we are prepared to respond to the problem that persists. It's just that there is one specific attack to which we gave a response. But the broader question of cross-border terrorism remains. And we have seen that during the funeral of slain internationally recognized terrorists, that the state remains complicit in this and is not yet ready to abandon or jettison this strategy. Operation Sindoor has not ended. Right. It is about the readiness to respond.
So, in your view, how do you see us balancing this security environment for India along with the India growth story, the vision of a Viksit Bharat?
So let me say, first of all, that, when we speak of first, I'll answer this in two parts. So one, when we speak about our readiness to respond, it also means that we are simultaneously pursuing a set of diplomatic steps to bilaterally and in the international forum to make Pakistan pay a price for its constant support for cross-border terrorism. Now, that would mean that we will be talking to our partners to say, with evidence, with concrete facts, with what they have done and what we have responded to say that the international community needs to recognize that despite having relationship with Pakistan, Pakistan's current trajectory is a source of problem for the world. We will simultaneously, and therefore they must condition their relationship, their assistance, their trade, their investment with Pakistan in a way that they take concrete steps to dismantle terrorist infrastructure of every kind, not just those that affect the Western world, because there is no real firewalls between different kinds of terror groups. That's one. Then in FATF, we will continue to exert pressure. It will require a lot of diplomatic effort, presenting literally a legal sort of a case, linking the state of Pakistan to the terrorist activities, so that there is clear evidence to put Pakistan back on grey list or additional strictures. Second is in the UN Sanctions Committee, we will have to continue to work. It'll be a formidable task because Pakistan also has P5 members that are, a one P5 member that is a great and a staunch ally. But it is important for China also to recognize that it is not in its interest to see such instability, such radicalism, such terrorism thriving in its own peripheric or its own neighborhood. And it requires that stable and peaceful periphery. So they should also put pressure on Pakistan, and that would also improve relations with India. And we'll also need the Gulf states, including Saudi and UAE, which have deep connections, and Qatar, which have very deep connections with Pakistan, to work on that. So there is a diplomatic angle. There is going to be a continuous message that cross-border terrorism will entail high cost. And to win this and to convey unambiguously that we will prevail and that we will hit back. There's no ambiguity on that. So that's a very important element of deterrence. Now, balancing this, we are even during Operation Sindoor, you remember we had very restricted objectives. I mean, we did not, every military campaign should have a set of objectives. It cannot be open-ended, right?
Yes.
So we are still pursuing with a set of clear objectives, keeping in mind that we will still have to retain international investor economic confidence. We will have to ensure that there is no impact on the domestic business sentiment, and that we can pursue our growth trajectory as we have been doing. And I think you've seen some of the steps that the government has taken, including the decision on semiconductor, one more unit.
Yes.
Shows that I can tell you that in the next few months, we will see a series of economic steps that will signal to our people and to the world that we are not going to be distracted from our growth path. And remember, a secure Bharat is indispensable for a Viksit Bharat.
Right.
You cannot pursue your dreams of prosperity without finding yourself in a peaceful state of mind.
Right. But, sir, help us understand this. How is it that the IMF approved a loan for Pakistan in the middle of this escalation with India? That too, could India have done more apart from the objections?
Well, first of all, let me say that this was approved in September 2024 for Pakistan. That the board was meeting essentially to look at the tranches. And one of them was, of course, under the Extended Fund Facility, EFF. And the other is the Resilience and Sustainability Facility. So together they are 2.4 billion, right? Now, the IMF is not in a sense, an institution that is in itself working. There are countries that are represented on it. So their tendency for the board is to take decisions purely on the basis of economic merits. But we have to now work at national capitals in all the major shareholders. For example, the US has 16% voting right. China has 6%, Japan has about 6%, France, UK has about 4%, Germany has about 5%, Saudi has a few, 2-3% on its own. And some other countries are grouped together and are represented by one country, like we represent, Bhutan, Nepal, and Bangladesh. So when we we have to go to these major capitals and impress upon them that the IMF is a responsible international institution, and it must follow the basic principles of international law, and that in a way we have to make sure that somewhere we don't just look at the economic merits, but we also look at the behavior. Because if an IMF loan releases pressure on a country to continue to pursue policies that are frankly in violation of the International Charter and in violation of international law and norms, then that country shouldn't be rewarded with this. So this is going to be admittedly a difficult task, but one that we will have to pursue. Because if you are getting loan and that releases pressure on the Pakistan military to pursue with its low-cost strategy, or see this as some sort of a license to continue with its strategy on India, then it's a problem. And legitimacy of the institutions, of any institution, depends also on the legitimacy of the criteria on which it makes those decisions.
Right. Let's turn to what everyone's talking about, sir. It's US President Donald Trump. He's now repeated his statements on mediation. In fact, he tweeted moments before India was to announce a pause. It gives that false impression of the internationalization of the Kashmir issue. What's the best way to clear the air on this? And, how does this impact the India-US relationship?
Well, again, you asked three questions, and I'll answer in three parts. One is, we cannot speak for why President Donald Trump decided to both tweet at that point of time or put it out on social media, and the content of his repeated remarks on the subject. I think maybe he wants to convey the impression of the power of America and his own power to influence the course of action or course of the world. And that may be, in fact, more of an overstatement, the American power to influence the course of the world, than perhaps it was the case in the past. And so we will leave it to him to decide what he does. That doesn't affect us. As far as internationalization, and first, before I say this, I think we've cleared the air repeatedly. We have both at the level of the Ministry of External Affairs, at the level of Ministry of Defense, but above all at the level of the Prime Minister, that what was the sequence of events that led to the cessation of violent military action. And my own personal experience in the government, and, I've been involved in this since because I dealt in some way or the other with the US account for more than a decade.
Right.
That we are not susceptible to mediation or to an international role, as the late Foreign Minister and Defense Minister Jaswant Singh said. We are two countries that speak the same language. We don't need an interpreter to tell us what to do. So I think we've clarified the air of that. Talking about internationalization, that's really in the mind. I agree with you that all of a sudden international attention is back on the issue of Jammu and Kashmir. There is a tendency, as I have written, even as the conflict, even before Operation Sindoor was launched, that there will be a tendency to contextualize this terrorist attack in the larger India-Pakistan dispute, or that there will be a tendency to turn attention away from terrorism to prevention of a conflict, and that there will be an effort to equate the aggressor with the victim. That means putting Pakistan and India literally in the same basket. We have seen that before. And we'll see that again in the future. And that is precisely, we need to take responsibility for our own security, for our own action. As far as internationalization is concerned, or mediation concerned, or rehyphenation is concerned, that's really in our mind. If we don't allow internationalization, it won't happen. If we tell our partners and friends, you just leave it to us. When we think Pakistan is ready to talk to us, we think the conditions are right, we will. And we have already laid out the terms and the scope of that and the conditions under which those talks can take place. So no matter how many times people speak about Jammu and Kashmir across the world, from Japan to the United States, Europe, or anywhere else, it's really for us to decide whether we want to encourage or engage in that sort of a conversation, and we won't. That's one part. And again, rehyphenation or being boxed into South Asia is really in our mind. Look at the difference in trajectory of our two countries. They're in continuous focus on investing in their military capabilities. There is a difference even in military capabilities. And on the economic side, technological side, on diplomatic side, there is a vast difference. Growth trajectories are very different. And I think you should know, I was just seeing somewhere that the GDP of Tamil Nadu is more than the GDP.
Yes, that's gone viral.
Right? Yeah. So I just saw this morning, and it just tells us that we need to continue to pursue our own growth story while ensuring that we are secure. not distracted by the international noise, not by the fancies and whims and fantasies of anyone else around in the
Hmm.
world who wish to see themselves as great problem solvers or deal makers or solution providers. That's for them to talk about. We pursue our path with clarity of our own objectives.
Right. But even beyond President Trump's social media feed, how does India tackle this global information war where, for at least a while, we seem to be missing in the narratives altogether?
Well, first, let me tell you that there's a very big paradox in this. The paradox is this, that I find, particularly in the Anglo-Saxon media, a tendency to be softer on Pakistan than.
Yes.
I saw this even after the 2008 Mumbai terror attack. A sort of a kind of relativizing this whole thing, recalling the Jammu and Kashmir issue and the long-standing dispute. So the desire to push that narrative is very high. And remember, what was it? There were two aspects. India's escalation. By the way, the escalation came on April 22nd, right?
Absolutely.
And the second is on that massive story which emanated, frankly, out of the Anglo-Saxon media on the number of how our Pakistan Air Force routed the Indian Air Force without actually waiting for facts to come out. Now, remember, this is a narrative they have put out.
Hmm.
And I have seen how much this has gained traction in the Anglo-Saxon, particularly the US and the British media. My take on this is that a lot of this has to do with commercial interests. They were particularly targeting one aircraft,
Hmm.
and that is because they see an international competition from that aircraft for different
Right.
markets. And this is, to me, seemed so obvious in the manner in which they tried to project that. It's a signal also to Taiwan that Chinese equipment are so superior now that you need to invest more in buying
Hmm.
US or equipment. And then, so this is my hunch, because much of this emanated from, I could be wrong, but my inference with reading on all that has been put out was this. Now, after that, I think from the kind of briefing we've done from 10th onwards,
Hmm.
the kind of both official briefing, the information, and we did want to wait. I think the government was in no hurry to start rushing with facts that could be not fully verified.
Hmm.
So it was important to put out a correct picture. I think that has begun to change things. You've seen a number of now international reports, including from media outlets or media houses that have historically been not very kind to us.
Yes.
They have also recognized that we inflicted more damage on Pakistan,
Hmm.
and that at some point the story on this will come out on the Pakistan Air Force versus the Indian Air Force, and I think the truth will be very different from what they have put out
Right.
initially. A lot of people are already sort of walking back from
Hmm.
the numbers, from the nature of hit, etc.
Hmm.
And a lot of these things are, when you launch a major attack against a militarily capable adversary, you will have to recognize that there may be one or two hits. It could be technical error issue. It could be an operational error. It could be a human factor. All
Hmm.
of this we will study carefully before we come out with whatever happened. But I think the narrative has changed completely now in terms of what we were able to achieve. And the fact that we have been speaking without hyperbole, in a restrained manner, on evidence, on the
Hmm.
basis of evidence, is carrying more credibility than all the information warfare they launched. Having said that, I had also mentioned in my piece on the 8th that we will not just have to prevail on the battlefield, we'll have to also win the battle of narratives in the age of social media and AI, not just with the foreign governments, but with the public, with the political leaders, with think tanks,
Hmm.
with the business community. It should be very clear that this is exactly what the outcome was. And I think we are now the impact of our briefings of both official, public, and source-based briefing, plus the evidence that people themselves are collecting
Yes.
on the basis of satellite images or piecing together the facts. They are recognizing that things are different from what was initially projected. And we will continue with this. We have to do this in a sustained and responsible manner with a lot of credibility so that the message gets through.
Right. As you said, the original escalation came on the 22nd of April. The Prime Minister said in his address to the nation that Pahalgam was more than a terror attack. It was aimed to incite a war of religions. So how important is it to communicate this strongly and repeatedly to the world now that we're talking about narratives?
Well, I think, and I had just started, in fact, the piece with this particular, one of the pieces that I wrote was basically this issue. Now, you see, there have been terror attacks when the objective is to inflict damage, or that is in terms of taking a toll of lives. It could be on security forces, it could be on civilians, right? Here was completely different, that in a very deliberate manner and in a very brutal, barbaric, obnoxious manner, that they identified male Hindus using religious symbolism, and then they shot them point blank in the presence of their families. Now, what was the objective of this? And when you were actually leaving them to go and convey the story, the rest of the family, that the manner of this attack was not a bomb explosion, which takes lives randomly. It was not a sort of a shootout that takes lives randomly or an attack on security forces, but that they singled out people precisely on the basis of their religion by actually conveying that we are doing so, and then killing them in front of their families and telling the families to go and convey the story. So the objective was, of course, to polarize our own country with its diversity, and to create social tensions, weaken the fabric of our society, and that has been a long-term objective, and we should never fall prey to that. The second one was to create a sense of mutual alienation between the people of Jammu and Kashmir and the rest of India, because they were expecting an immediate reaction would be absolute rage and loathing against the people of Jammu and Kashmir.
Yes.
And that in response, the people of Jammu and Kashmir would also express themselves as against. Now, remember, you're seeing there are still issues in Jammu and Kashmir to deal with. No one in government. But there has been a dramatic shift in peace, prosperity, and progress in Jammu and Kashmir. There's been a political process. You see images of the chief minister, in a engaging with the center, working with the prime minister to advance the common objectives. Now, if you have this situation and if this continues this year, then from their point of view, it is an irretrievably lost case. So right at the start of the tourist season, in the greatest symbol of the Jammu and Kashmir tourism, which is Pahalgam, apart from the lake, you go and attack right at the beginning of this tourism season. You've destroyed this year, but you are also hoping to sow the seeds of a new conflict between the people of Jammu and Kashmir and the rest of India. But the people of Jammu and Kashmir, as the Prime Minister has said, also rose together as one to condemn this, to protest against this, to stand against this senseless, brutal terrorist attack. And I think this should be a message also for the world. And we need to, reinforce that sense of solidarity and integration with the people of Jammu and Kashmir, but at the same time, send a message to the world that Pakistan has failed in its design, that you have people here who are in Jammu and Kashmir, who are happy with the progress that is being made, and that we wish to continue on that trajectory. So I think this was a very heinous attack, which was, as I also said, was more than just an act of terrorism or linked to
Mm.
the issue of Jammu and Kashmir. It also wanted to perpetuate the idea of two nations and two people who cannot, living in same geography, linked by rivers, connected by culture and language, the impossibility of them to
Right.
live together.
So, in the long run, how do you make Pakistan pay the price for state-sponsored terrorism?
It's a big question. One, of course, is that remember, we came to this point after trying various things. We have, including, I mean, people forget, those who, accuse the government of being too aggressive in its posture, that after Prime Minister made that spontaneous stopover in Lahore, there was a terror attack within a week in Pathankot at the airbase, and that we actually took this unprecedented step of allowing them to come and do a joint investigation. But that did not lead to any change. We have also worked through FATF, UN Sanctions Committee. We have tried to get the international community to exert pressure on Pakistan. We have engaged them bilaterally. None of this has worked. So we had to raise the cost of terrorism. And the message this time is very clear that if you hit us, we'll hit you harder. In terms of, and that now we have erased the distinction between the military and the terrorists. Secondly, the Indus Water Treaty is, I mean, some people say it will, of course, affect the people of Pakistan, but I think there is a need for recognition that the state is as a whole has been complicit in this, and that the people of Pakistan also need to realize that there is, that they need a change in the internal dynamics of Pakistan. That the foundation of that country, or the preeminence of the military in that country, anchored in hostility towards India, is not something that is going to give a bright future to the people of Pakistan, and that is actually experiencing a fairly strong decline relative to where they were some decades ago. So we have tried different means. We've come to this point where we have unambiguously conveyed our strategy. We have raised the costs. Our deterrence should work, but I think they will test us. There is no question about it. At some point or the other, you will see them test the validity and the seriousness of our posture. But there will be surprise. We will never write down or declare what will be the scale, nature, and the impact of a terrorist attack that could trigger a response from India. And we will never disclose what that kind of a response will be. There will be a surprise element, as there was in Uri, there was in Balakot, and there was this time. And there will be another element of surprise as we go forward. So I think when that's one part of it. But the second is that we will have to work to change the internal dynamics of Pakistan in the long run, because the cycle of violence extracts a very huge psychological, economic, social cost and us beyond just the lives that are lost. So we've got to be able to start working to change the internal dynamics. We will also have to think of a whole range of asymmetric means, and then work with the international community to make them realize that if they are so concerned about conflict in South Asia, they have to put that pressure on Pakistan to dismantle the terrorism infrastructure. After that, I don't see why there should be a reason for anything different. I mean, we can have a normal neighborly relation, even if it's not a friendly relationship. But this is something that we will have to work at various levels in the long run. Even as we strengthen our deterrence posture, we strengthen our predictive, preventive, and preemptive capacity against terrorism. And remember, prevention is better than cure.
Sure.
We have to strengthen our punitive capacity, our capacity to protect our people, because the more you are able to foil terrorist attacks, the more they lose the incentive to continue with it. That's one. And the punitive element, which we have already declared. Then diplomatically, we have to work, continue the pressure on the Indus Water Treaty, and then work to change the internal dynamics of Pakistan.
Sure. In the end, Ambassador Ashraf, What role do you think diplomacy can play now in this, given that we need to transform solidarity with India to concrete support for India on global platforms?
I think this was also a test. Also before this attack took place, after the attack took place and before our response, I had mentioned that it's very easy to condemn terrorism, speak of solidarity and sympathy, but translating this into concrete action may be harder. One, of course, is that I think Pakistan has some nuisance value for them. They also do have maintained friendly relations with these countries. They also have some value to them for counterterrorism and their own counterterrorism objectives. If you recall, President Trump had mentioned Pakistan in his State of the Union address this January as having provided support in getting hold of a wanted terrorist for the United States. So these kinds of things are there. They also see it's a country where the military is probably the only force of cohesion and guarantor of the integrity of that country. That is a nuclear-armed country. And that it is a hotbed and it's a sort of a hub or an epicenter of all kinds of terrorism groups and networks. So they want to maintain that relation also for geopolitical reasons, that they don't want Pakistan to be completely swallowed by, or well, say completely embraced in the tight embrace of China. I mean, these calculations work on them. So we will have to remember that even as we today focus on the great era-defining geopolitical changes that are taking place in the world and deal with the global opportunities and challenges as we are doing, we need to keep our mind and our eyes focused on the challenges emanating from our neighborhood. Militarily, we will be, but also we will need to do that diplomatically. That has to, again, become an important talking point for us with our interlocutors. We have to also convey to them in some way that you can't do business there and you can't do business here. Right. What are the economic levers that we have? What are the strategic levers? What are the diplomatic levers that we have that we can use in a sophisticated manner, but in a very clear manner with our partners to ensure that they hold Pakistan accountable? I'll give you an example. With France used to be a supplier of weapons. I mean, it had supplied Mirages and Augusta-class submarines to Pakistan. But ever since our relationship with France has become so deep, so close and strategic, they have absolutely closed off any kind of military assistance to Pakistan, any kind, even for the old equipment, the old Mirages, the old Augusta-class submarines, there's absolutely zero support. They have, in fact, told their companies that if you can't even supply it through third countries, such as other European countries, etc. So I think also to condition their assistance to steps that they take on terrorism. I think it's something we will have to work on because it's in the larger global interest that there is a change in behavior and change in the course of Pakistan.
Right. Ambassador Ashraf, wonderful talking to you and hearing your point of view. Thank you so much for joining us on the Statesman Talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be able to join you here.
Thank you, sir. That's it on this episode, but don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. We come to you from The Statesman, which is one of India's oldest English newspapers.